no debating. There's no way you can argue that we're wrong. We have the facts. And then your answer is like, what, are you for the Republicans? No, I'm not for the establishment Republicans. And look at how they're working with Obama. I mean, all of this is so clear. So if you don't believe about the Nigerian scam and want to call me a conspiracy theorist, and that's really what it is. A lot of mainstream media, it hit me today, are really fiction writers for the establishment. They know they're con artists. They've taken over the world with fraud, and they hate those of us that start questioning their narratives that have been proven to be faulty, disingenuous, and deceptive. And we're just here questioning known liars. They call that being a modern heretic, which is a conspiracy theorist. Well, I'm honored to be called that. We'll be back with the rest on this. By the way, you know the new Muslim mayor of London? The guy that has announced they're not going to let any images of women in bathing suits be on the side of buses. That's how it's starting. He's just ordering you can't have any images of women in bikinis or bathing suits or short dresses in any city-owned buses or advertising space. And he said that they need to not be, quote, Uncle Toms about Islam. He has come out and he has said that in the Evening Standard, quote, take back control. How do you pronounce his name? Sadiq Khan calls for more powers for London to protect capital after Brexit vote. And you read it, what it is called munization. Arnold Schwarzenegger 6 years ago, when the global carbon treaty failed because it got leaked that it was a total fraud, they were hiding the decline in temperature, remember all that? Arnold took over the UN program for munization. You know of it as strong cities when it comes to the UN police and border takeover system. But in this case with munization, they just go in and wine and dine the mayors and the leaders of cities and get them to sign on and basically pay them off to agree to citywide carbon taxes, regulations, zoning, and Agenda 21. And that is basically what this mayor is saying. In a lengthy article, he's come out and said, we must take control of our own destiny, override what the rest of the country and the federal government's doing, and we will just tell everybody that's here illegally or whatever you want, stay here. That's why almost unanimously Muslims voted to stay in the euro, because it's working with them to conquer the continent. You cannot make the magnitude of this up. The Mayor Khan today called for London to take back control of its own destiny. In the aftermath of the EU referendum, the mayor issued a demand for more tax-raising powers. Oh, yeah, how great. Right now, more taxes right now. Yeah, 75% taxes in London on average aren't enough, as well as far-reaching command of public services. Absolutely. Give us control now. My power. His de-evolution wish list stopped short of calling for London, the only English region to vote, stay within the EU, as a city-state. But he stressed the extra powers would be necessary to protect the capital's economy, jobs, and prosperity from the uncertainty of the Brexit ahead. Yeah, the city of Austin is a munized city, and it is basically under UN regulations. And we just covered this yesterday. ABC News goes, oh, yeah, the United Nations is telling us prepare for more refugees from Latin America. And then you read deeper, the UN runs, and we have the Border Patrol saying on tape, yes, the UN sues us, the UN is down here monitoring us, the UN is basically telling Obama what to do, and then Obama comes out and says, I'm not going to enforce. In fact, I'm going to load illegals with diseases on buses and ship them into the U.S., even after the Supreme Court rules you can't do it. And Jakari Jackson and Don Salazar and Michael Zimmerman have just done over-the-top great jobs. They have interviews with Border Patrol, who, by the way, have a lot of courage. Border Patrol has said before Congress, if they speak to the media about what they've been ordered to do, they are reprimanded, fired, or even arrested. They are indicting Border Patrol agents, claiming they violate national security when they expose they've been ordered to stand down and violate law. But I guess the Border Patrol now has the Supreme Court behind them and have just gone too far. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not dehumanizing the poor people trying to get here from their collapsing hellholes. The globalists are bringing them here unvetted to collapse us. That's the plan. So I'm not against taking people in the lifeboat, but the lifeboat's going to sink. We have to vet people. We have to test them for diseases. Every other country in the world does that. Mexico tortures you if you're caught there illegally. But they're allowed to come up, get on trains, stay on one major conduit out of Guatemala. This is on record. And to come up to Texas, Arizona, and California. That's it. If they get off and they don't comply, they are put in forced labor, or they are tortured, or if they're a woman, they are almost universally raped. There's an Amnesty International report out today basically saying that the majority of Mexican police and military are raping women. And all I'm saying is, why is it we only hear that America is evil and bad when by so many metrics we're a really good country of good people, no matter what color we are? Why is it all day we don't give enough, we don't pay enough, we don't put up with enough when we are the most? But then it's also now hard to become a legal citizen because they don't want you doing that. They want to make it illegal because the Democrats can then manage that illegal group and protect them, but make them their slaves. And that's what this is. When you live under a tyranny, the government believes its authority is absolute. There are many different political combines that want total control, want dictatorial control, because they're in a battle with other elites for total global domination. And, well, little people, we don't even register in their analysis. That's why we have to not comply with corruption, not comply with arrogance, not comply with tyranny, and not make it easy for these oppressive historical systems to be established. Because once they're established, they only go downhill and they begin to eat themselves. And folks go, well, good, they'll fall. But when they fall, it kills tens of millions of people in ancient times. In World War I and World War II, 30, 40, 50 million people died per event. In global depressions, tens of millions die. Conservatively. 7 million here alone in the Great Depression from starvation. Look it up. We have a very short memory. We just sit here going, hey, everything's great. The local bar is always going to have beer. There'll always be food at the grocery store. As the elites start retreating to their bunkers and with private security firms. As scores of nations every few months collapse into complete bedlam. From Western Europe to Eastern Europe to Southern Europe to Africa to Asia to the Middle East to South America to Central America to Mexico. Pretty much the majority of Mexican cities have collapsed into lawlessness. Mass graves are found everywhere. Students protest, 35 are killed, another 20 are killed. It's not even in our news. There's a few little bubbles, protected zones like Cancun, where the elites themselves have agreed not to kill each other, that the crime rates are tenable. And that's the same model we're now going under here. I want to get to these reports that our reporters filed that are up on Infowars.com. I want to get into what really happened with Benghazi and the latest, quote, findings that really aren't new findings. But I think it's helpful to illustrate that we've been lied to, but also to look at the incredible arrogance of Hillary scores of times telling the public one thing, oh, it's about a YouTube video, and behind the scenes saying, we've got to cover up these optics. We don't want to blame this on Arabs. That's politically incorrect. Because they were busy creating an al-Qaeda proxy army to overthrow Assad next. And the ambassador would not give the 3 warehouses of missiles and high-impact weapons to the Turkish ambassador to be delivered to al-Qaeda, now known as ISIS, and so he had to die. So everyone was told to evacuate. In the weeks while the weapons were being stockpiled, support was pulled more and more until there was no one there. And then they said the ambassador had such courage. All the security was pulled for weeks, down to nothing. And then he stayed. Well, he stayed because he wasn't going to go along with the transfer. And the Turkish ambassador left angry that morning, and what started a few hours later. That's Benghazi, folks. That's what happened. They had him killed. I told you that the week of Benghazi, and that's the little piece. Of course there was a stand down. That's all come out. We told you that 4 years ago. Because we have the sources that were there. We have the sources that were watching at CENTCOM and AFRICOM, watching with their own eyeballs what was happening on those feeds. And Southcom could see it, and Northcom could see it, and everybody could see the drones for 13 hours circling, 8 hours of firefights. And then we sit here and have all these commissions and reports to figure out Hillary Clinton's lying. And they're calling it, you know, in Politico, final Benghazi report details administration failures. They talk about that evil, demonic chipmunk meets the Joker, Hillary. That man in drag. They talk about how she screwed up. She meant to go to Libya and make it a failed state. She meant to go to Libya and destabilize it and bring in al-Qaeda. She meant to do that all over the Middle East. That's the deal they made with Saudi Arabia. That's the program. That's the operation. That's what they're doing. Everyone, oh, Hillary's so inept. Oh, Hillary's so bad. She's such an idiot. No, Hillary thinks you're a moron. And I watched all these male congressmen up there making really good points off the commission. And then there was this female congresswoman. And again, I meant to write down her name, but she was off the stage. And was this Republican going, and it's horrible that we stood down. What would have happened? It could have been much worse if Gaddafi's militia would have attacked. And I went, because I was kind of halfway watching while I was lifting weights. And I went, what? And that's why we're in trouble. Because I've seen polls where 30-something% of Americans think Gaddafi ran al-Qaeda. Gaddafi was fighting al-Qaeda. Gaddafi, 8 years before, made a deal with the West to invest all the country's money with like BP and Halliburton and for a return for their population to build infrastructure. He brought in all the Western hotels. He said, I'm sorry, I'll pay reparations for fighting you for 30-something years. And they set him up, folks, to put al-Qaeda in charge. You're like, well, he deserves that. Really, the people of Libya deserve to have al-Qaeda killing them? We talk about Obama loving Africans. Al-Qaeda is one of the most racist organizations out there. Going back to Arabs running the slave trade, look it up. They killed Muslim blacks, everyone they could find. Look it up. Look up Al-Qaeda or rebels in Libya killing blacks. Because they're like, hey, this is our North Africa. Africa doesn't belong to black people. Nowhere belongs to you. Go to the moon. We're going to kill you. And they also know that black Libyans tended to be loyal to Muammar Gaddafi, who, I don't endorse socialism, but if you're going to have it, it could be under Gaddafi. Because the guy lived in a tent, and his palace was like an 8-foot wall with a swimming pool, looked like a blue-collar house. And he distributed 99% of the oil money to build infrastructure and just with lotteries to the public. Just here's money, boom. 65% of their college graduates were women. He was sending money all over Africa to build wells and aquifers and power stations. They killed him better than a hammer, folks. Now, this World Net Daily, Obama-backed rebels killing Libyan blacks. And that's why Louis Farrakhan, who knew Muammar Gaddafi, finally came out against Obama. And said, basically, to hell with Obama because he killed Gaddafi. And that's absolutely true. I mean, for all Gaddafi's problems, he was a honorable, brave, good person compared to Barack Obama. And a true anti-racist. And that's what our elite did to them. And it's the same thing with Assad up there. Everybody living in peace, women going to college, industrializing the nation, opening up to the West, bringing in Western money, going, okay, I'll start transferring out of power, we'll have elections, and they double-cross them and bring in al-Qaeda to just wreck the whole place. I mean, let me tell you something. Syria, before the Civil War 5 years ago that the West started, was an incredible place to live or visit. I've talked to folks. Europeans loved it. I mean, they say the most beautiful coral reefs, the most beautiful markets, the most nicest people. Well, the globalists don't like non-radical, foaming-at-the-mouth Muslims. Because the truth is, up until about, 600 years ago or so or less, Syria was Christian,